Okay.
There's a straws again. Back up.
So last time we say Zhentong and Zhentong cannot compare because the commentaries of Buddha's teachings, Zhentong do not have complete doctrine written, composed by high level of bodhisattva. And so they have to go, they have to rely on variety doctrines written by ordinary beings, ordinary panditas. And of course, some parts, maybe they rely on high level of bodhisattvas, but not all of them. So Zhentong completely focus bodhisattva material, which means the 10th level of bodhisattva, almost Buddha. And then these commentaries direct disciple Asanga. So therefore cannot mistake. So therefore is how many robots are powerful cannot compare the universal monarch. So similar of that. So that's we live there. So today is we say kachik ndor de gdrshar na tsogla gon pi son shir tan chu gon tsan lo gon to kagamod karte den na ang gerwi gon der shamba li lhaqpa shukjin jichten kham kun tsarkyang met. Okay, so that one is some people think, oh, we have to rely on commentaries. Because that sutras are for the variety of the sentient beings. So that's why teaching very interpretable and not easy to understand. So we have to rely on many commentaries. People say that. Then Taranatha say he already refused that in the past, but if we say one more point now, he say, if we have to rely on commentary is absolute necessary, then you must more focus on the bodhisattva material, because you cannot find any better commentary than material. You cannot find anywhere in the world, no possible. Because he is the only person we have the full teachings or the subject so exist. So, and the Asanga is the only person direct disciple of him. So that's what he's saying. If you 10 directions research, you cannot find better than him. So that's why is where is Zhentong relying on and Bodhisattva material, and Asanga is the best. Pagpaglad Sanmer to be Shirdavi Lankarshang, Lonstan Jonskar, number Charvi, Takar, Rixo Zhentong Sert, Tragita, Kalin Jigmes Sokjang, then he Tenhiche, Jedjavan and Eastern Chukyong, Namrikumar Tragi, Latak songs. So then Nangajuna is the valid Panias of Madhyamaka because is Chantakilti he referred and longer a sutra. And then if that case, then he saying Karor number charvi takaras. That is commentary Akutabuta Taya, isn't it? That is in Tibetan Karo number charvi taka. That commentary written by Taranatha. His 6 treatises he explained as Zhentong in that commentary. Another commentary of Kalin Jigmit. Kalin Jigmit also, I think the Nangajona also similar way of Zhentong. And then Vjirgyawa no Nisten Shirkyongus. Vjirgyawa is 400 verses at the middle way is written by
Aryadeva.
Aryandewa. So Aryandewa, that is explanation is the written by Dharma Pala. He made a commentary of Aryandewa's teaching the 400 verses. Also, he explained as Yogacara Madhyamaka, not the other way around. Okay, so this all, if we refer them, then Zhentong way is the best. That's the most correct, accurate. That's he saying. So, in other hand, any of the Nagajonas and his disciples, is there any similar of Rangstong? If you have that question, then answer is he said yes. Yes is quite close to the Rangstong way of saying things. There exist, but the means this is not is confirmed something, or the way of the Rangstong is the most valid. Is not that. This is something we need to confirm. It's not already confirmed. Okay. So the reason why he's saying that is that why he give that reason? Because Chantakilti time is the agu. Chantakilti is the Chantakilti time is the most agu on the Madhyamaka, and then if we look at Chantakilti and the Dignanga, who is the first? Of course, Dignanga. So that means Bodhisattva Maitreya's direct disciple Asanga. Asanga's disciple was the Bandhu, and then continued Dignanga and Dharmakirti and so forth. And all of them, that time, Taranatha point of view, that time there is no agu on Madhyamaka. Because everybody knows the Zhentong way, the Dignanga, and everybody's way is irrefutable, and that correct. That's why no arguments. But Pakpi Ngulop Namla means the area being the Asangas and or even Nangajonas, they all the disciples, there is no argument in Madhyamaka. So then after after they have argument between Pasanjika and Sotantrika, all of them later on come up. So that means the Ranthong and Zhentong also the argument is only later on. So that means the later on people not enough knowing. So that's why, because they rely on not the they not completely focus on the right doctrines. So that's why. So Pashim join performance. So all the arguments is not the confirmed weakness, is only just arguments. That's he saying. And then he said, Chapertot Sugnam Tang Ramngatang, Shanchip Simder Sox Jantongstan, Devshir Lodrö Devshir, Lodrö Gompa Nikilin, Lodrö Togmit Jamtam Sonsoji, Renchin Joni Jivi Xervershet, Gyatso Sokyan the Tang Shonton of Sons. Another argument Taranatha saying is because usually all Ranstongpas the best arguments is always saying is Nangajona. So Nangajona or Chantakirti explaining Nangajona, that kind of. So he's saying here, even is Nangajona, his 6 treatises, his treatises and his Rimga means he's the commentary of the Gu Samaya. And then also Nangajona has a commentary on Bodhicitta, Simder. All of them is you can find Zhentong view there. So that means even Nangajona's point of view is Ranstong and Zhentong both they explaining, not only just Ranstong. And not only that, but also the Asanga and because according to Ranstongpa, Asanga and Nangajona is like kind of contradiction. But he's saying Renchin Joni Jiva. So this Ranna Kara Saranjo.
Ranna Kara Shanti.
Or Ranna Kara Shanti is the Indian master. He's saying, in his commentary, he said Nangajona and Asanga has no contradiction. And they're all same, no contradiction. Not only that, but also Shantarakshita and so forth, also saying the same thing, not contradict of Nangajona and Asanga. Okay, so all this together saying is Rantongbas is wrong because later they are wrong, not from Nangajona, but later on they are not 100% wrong, but they are a little bit wrong because of how they relearn the commentaries, not the perfect. That's his saying. But the early ones, there is no contradiction. Gajik ranjik ngokpar tarnan so ranjik tehwak salwatang ranjton parchir tarang so pinju stoki fyoyel menjin damatat. So he's saying the most argument in the Madhyamaka is some people don't believe the self-awareness. Some people are self-awareness, which means the commentary. Which means the categories of the consciousness. So that means the Pasangajika and those, they don't believe 8 consciousnesses, only 6 consciousness. And the Zhentong, they believe 8 consciousness. But not only Zhentong, also some of Rantongbas believe that. So the one of the 8 consciousness. 8 consciousness, but also not only that, self-awareness. So awareness, you can wear a self or not. So the Samaranton, but they don't believe that self-awareness. So this if somebody disagree, have the self-awareness, even those, even among this Rantonpa self-awareness disagreeing, even those some have to, some is agree self-awareness, but not self-awareness exactly as Chitamata. So sosoran tekhwak sarwata. So sosoran rikwiyeshi, which means the self-awareness of the primordial self-awareness. This sense, everybody have to agree, no choice. So this is only arguments between Rantongbas, the Svatantrika and Pasangika. Not really, you cannot disagree with Zhentong, because Zhentongbas have no arguments on that, and Rantongbas themselves argument and basically is not very stable, always unstable, because some believe, some don't believe. Some believe some kind of self-awareness, but some kind of self-awareness don't believe. There's too many arguments, basically showing the unstabilityness. So basically, you cannot argue the self-awareness because the self-awareness is not argued by intellectual arguments. You cannot, so that's why it is not agreeable. Okay. Churanga rang vision some sogma vision na olame tachin chaji mronwi. Longton starna Zhentong je pantats. Another reason saying Rantongbas in doctrines, you don't have that category of the 5 dharmas and 3 natures. You don't emphasize on that. But if you don't emphasize on that, you cannot really claim you are explain very well of the Mahayana doctrine, because these things is very, very details in the Asanga's doctrine. He focused on that, and those is key points of the categories. Okay, so if that case, why that's so important? Because Asanga is the best commentator of Buddha's teachings. Buddha himself, Buddha himself predicted in the sutras. And so there is clear reference in the sutra saying that Asanga is the best commentator, and he never mistake. So that's Buddha himself said. So if you don't rely on Asangas, these five dharmas, the three natures, then you cannot explain very well the Mahayana doctrine. So that's the same. Okay, so Rantongpas, they don't focus on that for dharmas and the three natures. They think something to do with Chittamata, but the reality is not that something to do with only Chittamata. This is the main focus, keywords on Mahayana Dharma. Okay. Kartir en ton konav jette tiang mapam gombu jant tarvifshir or gonder and kandu lungda hwain oladrub nyeki yetami shirtan takchin pa kan gerer ndo shirtan sang geli khkin khurxortan ndorde parchirtan stan ba tan sangi nyeki nyewi chigertan sartun la shukchi gon shuk certain lion, sabji wangshu yin, nyan tupan nam Gyatso yin barandos. So when we talking about that bodhisattva material, and Asanga is the most important commentator, why? We have many reasons already said, but more reasons if we say, if we understand, then we easily know Rangtongpa way is not the most correct, most valid. It's not most valid. We know that. So that's why, again, saying, if you explain and agree exactly around Rangtongpa way, you can do that, but you contradicting Mapam Gombo means that bodhisattva material. Okay, so Mapam Gombo Janta Traditions. So Mapam Gombo Janta Tradition means okay, maybe you are correct, but the 10th level of bodhisattva material, he made a different. That's it. So bodhisattva material is, we already said, cannot be even in 10 directions. It cannot find any better than his commentary. Better than his commentary. We cannot find any better than commentator of him. Okay, so not only that, but also why? Another reason, if you can find, if you say, because Rangtongpa always say the most valid because Nagarjuna. They always referring to Nagarjuna, but he's saying here, bodhisattva material is Nagarjuna's Yidam. Nagarjuna's Yidam deity, not just a Sangha, but also Nagarjuna's Yidam deity. So how come you say Nagarjuna's Yidam deity is mistake, but Nagarjuna not a mistake? You cannot say that. So that's why relatively Yidam in Shirtans. Takshin Pakan Gerando Shirtans. So all the Mahayana people that Bodhisattva material is only appearance as Bodhisattva, but the reality is Buddha already. So therefore we say sometimes we say Buddha material. And also we believe the next Buddha is the Bodhisattva material. That is a Sutrayana level. But in Tantrayana level, because Tantrayana also is belong to the Mahayana. So in Tantrayana level is already Bodhisattva material is the principle of the Buddha mandala. So that means it's just the Bodhisattva or retinue of the mandala. So mandala Buddha field. So he is the principle of the mandala Buddha field. So there's also not all sutras, but many most of the sutras also saying he is a Buddha. Okay, regardless he's Buddha or Bodhisattva, he is definitely the most close heart son of the Buddha himself. Because even when Buddha Shakyamuni manifests in the human realm from the God realm, and his region is the Bodhisattva material anyway. So, so not only Buddha Shakyamuni, but also can be many, all of the Buddhas, the Hasan. Certain lion, this is the reality, but the appearance, what is appear for the ordinary sentient beings, still he is 10th level Bodhisattva. The most lowest he could appear is the 10th level of Bodhisattva, which means next step is Buddhahood. So that's why it cannot be wrong. And Nyantu Namjang Gyatso Yembarandos. So even is Sharvakas and Patiyakas, even they accept he is region of the Buddha, Shakyamuni. Okay. Lodrö Merkir San Tony, Gary Tona, May Skiorton, Kunjang Mount, Lonston Samin Jang, Nyantu Namjang, Token Sharvazir. Gonder Kambo Zang and Lexer Schutz. So our argument is why is Zhentong commentators is more superior than and Rantongba's commentators of the Buddha's teachings. So that's why I said the best Rantongba's always referring is Nagarjuna. So Zhentongba's not saying Nagarjuna is not great. Never say that. Zhentongba's agreeing, yes, Nagarjuna is great. But also Zhentongba's explaining a Sangha is even greater than Nagarjuna. Okay? So the point is here saying, the reason saying this, a little Merkir Sanatong, yes, Nagarjuna is great, but he is a human, and our first level, first Burmese level of Mahayana. When his life always a normal human is as human under the Buddha Shakyamuni. And so, yes, Buddha prophesied Nagarjuna are well enlightened, yes. That is Mahayana point of view. But so according to the Sharvakas and Padyakas, basically according to the Hinayana point of view, Nagarjuna is Stokin Charva, means intellecting, how to say, a little bit lost of intellectual. So many point of views, if you put it together, then you cannot compare with Asanga. Basically, not saying Nagarjuna is not good, but if you look many points, and then Nagarjuna is little bit inferior than Asanga. So that's same. So therefore, if you really want to analyze who is the best commentator, you can analyze this way. Modern Kambuzang and Lechshut Chicks. Song Lastin Sargi Nishted Mot, Dambi Tonda Mapam Gomboya, Karawatsan Milingoni, one chips. Of course, if we took the part of the Vajrayana, Tantrayana, and then of course you can reach enlightenment very fast in one single lifetime or a few months. Possibility is always open. But so even is in that case, bodhisattva material is so the reality bodhisattva material is countless eons ago already Buddhahood, innumerable eons ago already reaching Buddhahood. Okay, another arguments, some Rinpoche say like this. Kachik Fiambi Zhentong Chen Moje, Jambi Yang Ranstong Son Solo. So, yes, some Rinpoche say, oh, yes, we agree that as Bodhisattva material, yes, he taught is Zhentong. We agree. But Manjushri taught Ranstong. Ranstong Son Solo. Son Solo means is you know, something, oh, you said that, and then we are life, that kind of. Son Solo means you are completely disagree, you know, like you said something silly, then we say, oh, Son Solo. So Jambian Ranstong Son Solo. Why I say that? Because Jambian Kim the Terjon Kana Yosi. Can you show me which doctrine of the Manjushri's saying around Tomba? Please show me. Where is it? Because Manjushri's commentary is only two. One is talking about the Tantrayana. Profound teachings. This is called Manjushri's speech. And then Manjushri Yasha, you know, the Shambhala's Kalki Shambhala. These both are commentaries. His commentary Kortan Dortan. All of them is very clear. Zhentong. So where is Rangtong Manjushri taught? Which one is show us? So Zhen Tartam Zingi. So there is no other text Manjushri taught Rangtong. So please don't lie. So many said that. Then so Nangajona say Rang Lugla Kaxar Mevjin the Janji Jean Chugurnam Larkerdepa Shunzan Doingi Lapa Mayenam Gajik Sham Chu Ranton Yenzerwa Rank Korna Wanchi Siktazats. So he said, you don't have clear reference and clear understand of your own doctrine and on your own way. On way he talking to Rantomba. At the same time, you are criticizing others' doctrine and others' points, views. That is Kerndip. So Kerndip is how to say? This others. Dispute others, yeah? Dispute others. It's force disputing. So, this is very unbiased demons of the grasping. Yeah, so inside have a demon. If you don't have any even clear your own view, and then you try to argue in others and forcefully. And that's he said. And then he said, Gajik Sham Chu Ranston in Zerwa, Rankan Korna Wanchi Siktazats. Some others say, oh, Buddha material as teachings is Ranston by point of view, not Zhentong. Who said this is only you talking among your own party. Your own party means all your own party. This is you cannot hear by others. Others never accept. Only those, like you brainwashed everybody in your party. Only you can say among them. But this is not good enough to say others. So that's he said. So he said, in both Indians and Tibetans, better to not say that. So Gyawad Parshir, Demon dot be la, one nam tong taranton yen zerwa, Arjong Stignilla, Jamtag, a new skun. Chapter Zhentong Kusengal, Tomit, Gary Changi Langjet P, Gondel Chok the Longton Sarojux. So you better either Indian or Indian, you claim the Indian master or claim the Tibetan master. Better to not say these things. The Tibetans who who disagree in definitive teaching of the first Dharma well and last Dharma well, and the first Dharma and last Dharma, all of them, you believe are Ranston point of view. If you can do that, but then you have too many contradictions inside doctrines and too many arguments among yourself, among themselves. And in particularly, you are contradicting on the doctrines. So better to rely on Sangha's teachings, commentary of the Buddha Maitreya. Why? Because the Asanga is the only clearly Buddha prophesies he is the best commentator of the definitive teaching. So therefore, superior, he's a superior commentator. So that's why we better to rely on that rather than rely on very ordinary ones and then arguing everywhere, contradicting among themselves. Jiang Rayin Shukji Lang, Chutak Renchin Joni, Joaso, Gerani Jim Chuk Longston by Yehi Nyon, Sanji Jong, Lagdana Latak Paksan La Sokupa, Dorgirkani Longston Saranjos. Not only Buddha Maitreya and Asanga, but also the Zhentong commentators are, for instance, Wazabandhu and Dignanga and Dharmakilti and Rinchen Joni Jiwijab. How you say that one? Ranakrashanti, yeah. All of them Buddha prophesies of they are the they are the best commentators. So that means the most of the Zhentong Baz, the lineage commentators are Buddha prophesies. Yehi Nyang Tang Sanji Kyang, Yeshi Nyangbo and Sanji Kyang Buddha Baldaya, and Legden and Chantakilti, all of them is Rantong Baz, the best commentators. Where is prophesied by Buddha? He said that. Where is Buddha prophesied them? Basically, he said no Buddha prophesied them. He not saying they are bad. He not said not respectable, but he said you cannot compare what the Buddha prophesied once. That's he saying. Okay. So we are not going, where is the prophesied, which word said it, such and such. We not going these details. These details, I hope maybe I requested, so maybe the translator, he put some in here. I hope if you look at carefully. If not, those things we can research, other people research, but we're not going details of this because then we lost. If we go too much details, then new people are lost. So we are just going very simply and is directly on the root text. So yes.
The sources or the different scriptures are at the end of the document. Ives has translated the supplement that Ternata wrote.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
So most of these quotes should be found there at the end.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Okay, so the time is almost there?
You've been going for about an hour. Almost an hour.
1 hour. So if we have many questions, we can stop here. If not too many questions, I'll go furthermore.
You can go a little bit more, Rinpoche, and if anyone has any questions, you can start adding the questions to the chat window for the Q&A.
Okay. Ringen Sogla Yehirnyoi, Khansta Chedra, Huadan Dawi Chang, Mount Tushan, Keeper Tahwavision, Muski Gonder, Khanbor Gunana, Gary Longston Ternam Zhentong Mas. So Yeshi Nyabo, how said in Sanskrit?
Gyanagarba.
Was he? So he's saying not only that, but even the Rangton Baz that commentators, for instance, in Gyanagarba, he's saying that Vazabandhu is the great Panis. You know, even the Rangton Ba commentator here agreeing that Zhentong Baz, the commentator of the Vazabandhu, he's saying he is great Panias. Gender guilty also Mount Tushan Kibi Tahwajins. Gender guilty also he incredibly respect that Nagajona is the most scholar ever had. Mushki Gondar and Kambor Gunan, Gary Longston. If you need a human best commentators, if you want, and you believe them, then those this Vazabandhu and so forth. Gentin Namjong Tambam Choyan Mo Longston Mipar Nandan Murnu, when Davi Lanker. $10 semtsam gon bachan dushasi. So gente namna tambam shukun mot means all the Rangton Baz commentators they are great, they are good, but you cannot compare what Buddha prophesied, those ones. He gave example that for instance Chandrakalti, he explaining that Langara Sutra, and then this world, he saying, oh, this is the Jitamata's doctrine. Okay, so Chandrakalti's point of view, and then the Langara Sutra is Jitamata's doctrine. But Vazabandhu's point of view, Rainian Kinner, Gomba Ninderla, Tenning on Yinmit Namsamla, Goning on Yinmit Stanchital, Doi Lontan Requam Son Yamla, Kim Chokainian Jabgi Long Rikutan. So Vazabandhu, he explaining that words from the Buddha himself said that commentary, from that he saying, oh, this is so he explaining that as like a Madhyamaka way, not just Chitamata way. So these three natures, and he explained that way. They both rely on sutra. They both apply in their own analytical view. But who is more correct, which one is stronger, is not the same. Kim Chokainian Jabdi Long Sense, his Vazabandhu's his point and his reference much more stronger. Of course, because Zamlong Gyantuk Tanson Kiparjan Papir the Stanchu shit both sir. Ranston Jean Luc Sanman Churintan, Capertan Girmam Churinkan, Sound Tamchedwai Kanjin, Kermit Kanjin or Kohamis. So there is not comparable commentators to the sixth ornament and to excellence in the India, which means the Vajabandhu is among the six, and the Asanga and Nangajona is to excellence. It is not in India. So the Rinpoche's commentary, the Rinpoche's doctrines is valid in general and superior in general. Among themselves, the Pasangika is superior, but so even that Pasangika point of view, you disagree, have the alaya, the eighth consciousness. You disagree, holding all the propensities of that alaya. You disagree, but you don't disagree. There is alaya. Okay. Riksha xarshit tan tranyon nupa ranrik lashtupa kukran rikzamji kwamis. So that means so among the Pasangika commentators also people have many disagreements each other. So most of them say you are seen, and what is you see, and what is clear and what is clear. All of them agree. So that means we're talking about Ranrik before we talking about self-awareness. So self-awareness, they are agreeing, but when they explain in self-awareness is not always the same. So we remembering things in the past because we had self-awareness. That is the Pasangika disagreeing, but they still agreeing some kind of the self-awareness. Jaron dentub kagamod yontub min ransim ranvision oxer gen machet ndanda rumir jonli kwamis. He's saying Jaron, so the interdependent, relational, truly exist. Of course, you negating that, but you want to the establishment, the thoroughly establishment. We're talking about three natures, okay? That is even the Ranstong doctrine. You cannot, or means that if that means Ranstong means the where is Ranstong Bas referring these teachings, you cannot disagree. That means what saying is Ranstong Bas, those disagreeing is the problem is later on the commentaries, but in the root of the teachings around Ranstong, of course you have to agree all those things. Why? Because all this even around the doctrines, the teachings, your mind is a continuity, and this luminosity, and continuity, luminosity, unbroken, Jemachapa, Danda Humirjoni Kohamis, all of them, or Madhyamaka, agreed. You cannot dispute that. They never dispute that. So basically, he's saying here, the root of Rinpoche's doctrines are, there is no contradiction or the Zhentong. Only the commentators didn't explain very well. Mistake explain. The central point is that, okay? So if you understand the central point, then you less confuse what the world is. Chaprakanji yaki mafshetpi yon mitkayang terlon maftano sakhi chanji rnyo trantonto ndokib dekshanyo tsamakasi. When we say talking about Rinpoche's the root doctrine, you have to think about the second training dharma. In that second training dharma, Kanji Namshi Kohamitsi. Kanji Namshi means the alaya, the earth consciousness. This never, he said, never dispute. Why he bring up these things? Because when usually we talking about Rinpoche Zhentong, or if you believe at consciousness, then is Zhentong Ba. If you don't believe that, then is Rinpoche Ba, like that. But he's saying Zhentong Ba's doctrines, yes, this at consciousness, self-awareness, these things more and more clarified, more emphasized. But even in second Dharma well, he said never dispute that alaya, okay? Didn't say yes, didn't say no, okay? So that's he said. You not say, oh, alaya there exist or not exist, neither said inside. Sakhe chanji nyaw tranton dokiv deksher nyaw tsamakasi. Sakhe chanji nyaw tranton. So the Buddha nature has all the 32 major marks, 82 minor marks. This kind of details, yes, dispute in the Rinpoche's doctrine, but not dispute a Buddha nature. So, ji stormjet tang, Jean-Luc tang so, Jean-Luc tang, Tremti Chachon tang, Shi ji Wodnam ji Xiapate, Tetak long Japalim troop de Deorajo Paos. What we has been discussed is the pioneers of Rinpoche and Zhentong, which one is superior, which one inferior. We analyze that. And their doctrines, how they are superior and inferior, we discuss that, and then we so the reference of the tennis, who is superior, who is more valid, so that's we discuss it. She would now Lakshapatis. So later Tibetan scholars we analyze it, and they are long. All of them, Natha say very simple way, clear way, and with a reference of the teachings. So we can leave there today. So then we have questions.
Okay, I think we'll start the questions. You can, by the way, everyone, you can keep asking your questions if you want directly or in the chat. So I think we'll ask on a series about the impact of Rangtong versus Zhentong. Since we've been talking about which one is superior, we've had a lot of questions come in about what that actually impacts and means. So the first one in this series is Rinpoche, many Rangtongpas have great faith in their way of view and receive benefit from that. Also, when their explanation is not yet complete. The question is, how much is it beneficial to reveal these profound Zhentong teachings for them? And is there any danger that they could be confused and lose faith?
Okay, I already said, but maybe people didn't hear. There is no danger if you go Rangtong way. There is no great danger. Okay, why? Because the Rangtong by point of view is, even is not 100% right, is still 90 or 95%, whatever is the right and right direction. Okay, there is no danger. Okay, and what is the disadvantage you could have only if you, how to say, bad view on the Zhentong. If you have a bad view on the Zhentong, that could be like abandonment of Dharma. The most profound, the ultimate definitive teaching, if you have a bad view, that is could be in fact very badly because you are too much, how to say, in the wrong way, and then you anything else you think is bad, that is dangerous. But you just understand in a wrong way you go in is not dangerous. The only thing maybe possibility slow path, but you are still right direction, and it will help to understand the Zhentong one day. Not you are the opposite direction, never. So like that.
Okay, so the next question you a little bit touched on just now, but I still think it's worth really clarifying. So the question is, two people practicing Kalachakra, but one person comes from a Zhentong background and the other one comes from a Rangtong background. What sort of impact would this have on their Kalachakra practice?
It is the same as I said it. So if you are a Zhentong point of view practice Kalachakra, and then you don't need to interpret anything, everything is very smooth, and you don't have to bend anything, commentaries or anything. Everything what Buddha said, when Karki said, everything is matched very easily, and it's like you drive a very nice road and a very clear map. If you go Rangtong by way of going, and then you could be sometimes confused, or you may not confuse, but a little bit bumpy and complicate road, because is you cannot go exactly what said. You sometimes you need a bend explain. So it's still you are the right direction. But it could be means not necessarily, but could be sometimes a little bit hard. That's all.
Okay, and then the last one in this sort of collection is Mipom found both views valid, someone said. So why can't the two views be married?
Yeah, it's both view is correct, because one you negating, you emphasize negating, Rangtong point of view, you negating all the relative interdependence, all of them you are negating, and you so that means for instance you are digging gold mile, you still go digging the gold mile, but you don't know what is really the mile inside the Rangtong point of view, but you can't say you are wrong, because you still digging, and you are still closer and closer to the mile. And Zhentong, but you know exactly what is you digging for, but you still digging.
Okay, so the next question is about how the Zhentongs view the realization of arhats. Do they realize the selflessness of phenomena as well as that of persons, even though they may lack bodhicitta? And also,
What? Say again?
the person's wondering how the Zhentongpas view the realization of arhats. Do they, arhat. Do they say they realize the selflessness of phenomena as well as that of persons, even though they lack bodhicitta? And then continuing this question, is it possible to practice tantric methods and attain an arahat level of realization if you don't do a good job of generating bodhicitta?
Okay, so basically, the last question you saying, how is it possible? Is it possible you practice Tantrayana in Hinayana way, right?
Yeah, is it possible that you lack bodhicitta and think you're practicing Tantrayana, so you end up in arhat?
No, no possible. Because practice Tantrayana means you need understanding Buddha nature, and that's why the Tantrayana, all Tantrayana match to the Zhentong point of view, not Zhentong point of view. That's why we, or even you are beginner, still you visualize yourself is as deity because of that. And secondly, you have to have a relative bodhicitta, because Tantrayana path means you have many complete bodhicitta working together. So that's why not possible. The first one you question, I didn't understand.
They just wanted to know how the Zhentong view the realization level of an arahat. Like from the Zhentong point of view, what has an arahat realized?
Oh. There is many arguments that Gelugpa point of view, even arahats, they understand the self-awareness and self-awareness and phenomenal both. They understand that, and the others dispute that. But I think the Zhentongpa point of view, I can't remember that now. I maybe talk later. I need to think about that. There's some I right now I forgot.
Okay. Now we'll switch to a few questions people had on self-awareness that you mentioned today. So you mentioned self-awareness, the primordial awareness. So which consciousness is that? Is it the 9th or 10th consciousness according to Chittamatra? What is this self-awareness, primordial awareness?
That means the self-awareness, you can have a relative consciousness, have self-awareness, but also you call the primordial awareness. You both, you can have both. Not saying extra a consciousness, but all the consciousness has a nature of you're not aware of the object only, but you are you aware of yourself? The argument is that. So that's very big arguments, many intellectual arguments.
Okay, so then that actually continues in that direction. Regarding self-awareness, you were asked to elaborate more on it because one argument this person's heard is that the mind cannot perceive itself. So how does Buddha nature, with the nature of clarity and luminosity, perceive itself? I am confused.
Mind cannot perceive oneself is arguable, and most more likely agreeing. Even mind consciousness has the self-awareness. Okay, so that's why memorize. We have a memories because of that, and of course, even you don't have that and mind consciousness. That doesn't apply that the primordial awareness, the enlightened awareness. Of course, that is, you cannot compare that. Impossible. Everything impossible things possible. The primordial awareness is this is because that Buddha nature. So that is innumerable quality, totality of everything. That's why.
Okay, and
the
then
simple answer is, regardless you agree and the normal consciousness have a self-awareness or not, you cannot compare that Buddha nature. You cannot compare that primordial awareness.
and also just to clarify for the person who asked, so you're still saying there's 8 consciousness, there's 8 consciousness. There's not an additional 9th and 10th just because we're referring to the awareness.
Sorry?
I was just asking, can you just re-clarify? There are 8 levels of the consciousness.
Yes, according to Zhentong, yes.
Yes.
According to Tantra, yes.
So the next question, I guess it seems like we have a variety of people watching who have different backgrounds. So some people have requested, we have contradictory requests. So I'll just try to explain. Some people have requested that you make the Zhentong view easier because they don't understand it when you reference all the masters and scholars when you're doing the explanations. So they wonder if there's any way to give the essential points of the Zhentong view in simple terms without referencing all these schools and doctrines. And then there are other people who maybe want to understand more about the different scholars and the things that are being referenced. So maybe.
Okay, you mean without reference, what is the central point of Zhentong meaning? You mean?
Yes.
Okay, that's very, because I advise always people think very simple way, don't think very complicated way, because if we look at the history, and the one of problem is people always thinking very complicated and making everything complicated. So that's why I advise think very simple way. So that means Rangtong means yourself is empty. Yourself means we're not talking about you and me. You and me, all you, and it. You, me, it, everything is once empty. Empty itself means essenceless. Rangtong means that. Zhentong means I'm empty of you, but I'm not empty itself. Okay, so that is the idea. We're not talking about you and me, not that, but you can analogy just between you and me. So it is very easy to understand. I'm not you. That's so obvious. I'm empty of you. That's so obvious. But I'm not empty myself. I'm exist, you know, in myself. So it's same as everything is itself. So that's the idea of Zhentong, okay, to understand the best, okay? But that's not ultimate view, okay? But the idea is that's very, very simple. There is nothing more than simple that, okay? So first can understand that idea. And then you say, oh, everything, all this samsara, virtues, non-virtues, everything, all this universe is itself is empty or not. Both Rartongpa and Zhentongpa agree, yes, all of them essenceless. Only illusional level we can experience, but is if you analyze it, you cannot find essence, and that is indicating the all is empty itself. There's no really agreement between Rartong and Zhentong. That's really agreed if we say simple way. Of course, if you make argument and you twist words, and then of course too many arguments, but simple way is that both agree. But then, okay, then we realize that attain this level, what is the point of view? Then I don't know what is the Rartongpa point of view, but in Zhentongpa point of view, because this all is not really ourself. This all is illusion, but there is behind that is true itself. That true itself is not illusion, not suffering. It is opposite, is perfect, and is absolute truth. This is not its empty itself. This is true itself, but still empty, sometimes called empty, sometimes emptiness, because only reason, because you are empty of any other things or any other illusion. That's all. So, yeah, it's simple. You have to understand the knowledge is this, you and me, that way is very, very simple. You have to understand, very, very obvious. If you take that knowledge and then you apply it, then is easy. Easy means not saying you can understand that right now and you realize right now, and then you have no problem, any problems, you have all the life problems disappear. We're not saying that, but the idea is you can get it. That you can experience only your practice, your practice and your merits, everything need millions of conditions. But the idea you can understand. But if you understand the idea, that is the one of the main condition to realize. One of, not all of.
The person says, thank you very much. That was very helpful explanation. So we're kind of wrapping up on time, but we'll ask another question or two. Another one going back to primordial awareness is, what are the differences between primordial awareness, Buddha nature, and the Rigpa of Dzogchen?
Same.
Okay. And then since we mentioned, and then a sort of a funny question. We mentioned that you were getting robes made, Rinpoche, in the first teaching. And so we have some question, if you could explain the different robe you're wearing. Someone was curious about that.
So I realized that the all robes is always made up on time. Sometimes they have some representations, but sometimes they have no representations. So they just made up on time and then becomes like tradition. So I thought that robes is the robes is very old. That Tibetan robes is very old. Something like very hot in India wearing. So you can see now there's Indian woman and everybody wearing these things, just the sari, all this kind of. So there is no absolute truth reference the Buddha's robe, only some part. So and then if you look in the China, Korea, everywhere, they're doing like themselves. Their tradition already exists. They're doing similar of them. India's they're doing similar of them. Only the southeastern some Buddhists they are quite close to the Indian regional robes, but not really. So firstly I thought it is maybe time to change it to fashion. Secondly, I had some dreams and some visions to have a benefit to change some designs. So all this combination together, then I making these robes. So what do you think? Do you think is a nice design or not really nice? It's completely new.
We've got some comments that the robe is fashionable in the comments. Yeah, we're getting a lot of very nice Rinpoche. It looks like people like the robe. And I guess we'll end on the last question is about just about Taranatha himself. So the Mongolians say, this is sort of relevant if anyone wants to know, next year we're planning to go on a pilgrimage in 2021 to do the Kalachakra in Mongolia, and Rinpoche will be giving a Kalachakra empowerment there. And we'll be visiting Shambhala land, which is supposed to be connected, very special, connected to Mongolia. So the question is, did Taranatha die in Tibet or Mongolia? Because the Mongolians say so, and the Tibetans don't seem to have reference. So the person's wondering about Taranatha and where he passed away.
You mean Mongolia said he passed away in Mongolia?
Yes, the Mongolians say he passed away in Mongolia and then was reincarnated as the Jetsun Dompa. But then in Tibet, there's no there's no awareness of Taranatha passing away in Mongolia. So they're wondering where Taranatha passed away.
Yes, that's correct. So in Tibetan reference, they don't have that, but Mongolia has that. And so is in general, Taranatha is very mysterious. And he has always the best answer is he has not only just one body. He always have many stories, many layers of story, and so that's why also he says he has many bodies and many emanations. So it seems like one emanation maybe in Mongolia, one emanation in Tibet. It seems like that, because there's many Mongolians believe that, and they have it's a lot of discussion there. So the truth is very big impact in Mongolia. So that's why is a very so we had a very big connection to study this Zhentong as like a preliminary, and then go one day physically go there, and we find Taranatha's places. Also, I want to say there's called Jonang Kin. There's a Jonang Kin, and some people call it Jonang, and some people call it Jonang. And that place in Mongolia, I heard, some people said they, for political reasons, later on they call it Jonang, but actually Jonang, you know, all these mysteries, a lot of mysteries, something we discover in the future.